Hi, Devon. Thank you so much for being here today. We're so grateful that we get to interview you. I would love if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, well, I'm glad to be here. My name is Devon Eriksen, and I've just made the transition from regular person to author. My first novel is, well, by the time you hear this, it will have already come out, and that is available on Amazon. So I'm here to talk about books I love, books that inspired me, and perhaps a little bit about the experience of learning to be an author.
Amazing. I would love if you could tell us what your book is about.
Ah, Theft of Fire, the first in the Orbital Space trilogy. It's basically a love letter to every head high stack of science fiction classics I ever curled up in the back of the library with. So when I retired and decided I wanted to write, I said, okay, let's do some science fiction. Let's envision the world of the near future and let's set a nice adventure story in it. Start small. Petty criminal gets blackmailed to do a job he doesn't want to do and end up in the technological singularity and the fate of the galaxy. Along the way, we'll take in some mysterious alien artifacts, AI having an identity crisis, lots of fun stuff.
Love that. What inspired you to write your book?
Well, a novel isn't one idea. A novel is a lot of ideas, but I think it really kind of started out. I was the son of one of the lead programmers on the Voyager spacecraft. So I grew up hanging around the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and going to all the Voyager press conferences and seeing all these pictures of the outer planets coming back live. Like they came back right at the press conferences, so that when they went up on the screen, you were seeing that for the first time that anyone had seen these. And as a child, I always imagined, okay, we're going to go out there someday, and someday we're going to even live out there. And that dream got deferred a little, but now that we've kind of privatized the space industry and some really cool things are happening, that's starting to be our vision of the future again. So, what does it look like when we've colonized the solar system? What kind of civilization do we have out there? How does that level of technology and that lifestyle affect the people? What is the experience of living in the solar system but outside the world like? And I really tried to capture that.
Love that. When you were writing your book, who were you thinking of when it comes to who your book is for?
Ah, well, my book, I have a very specific audience that I imagine. She's in her 30s. She's got two kids. She lives in Lawrence, Kansas, and she drives a bus, but she's a bit of a nerd, likes science fiction, likes Dungeons and Dragons. And this is an actual person. This is my first beta reader, but it's sort of a mental stand in for me of what kind of person reads this kind of book. You know, science fiction has very much, I'm old, so it wasn't always this way for me, but science fiction has very much become mainstream. And it's gotten people thinking, which I think is the function of science fiction. It's gotten people thinking about what the future is like. How is it going to be different from today? And we like to imagine that. We like to think about that. We're in love with the idea of things getting better and making progress and inventing new stuff and exploring new worlds and ideas. So it's people who are excited about the future. Maybe people who are a little bored of post-apocalyptic wastelands.
Love that. How long have you been writing and what made you really sit down and start?
Well, I think that I've always wanted to be a science fiction writer ever since those JPL press conferences. And various adults in my life said, "Oh, honey, that's not a good dream. Writing is very hard. It's very hard to be
Mm.
successful at writing." And I at the time I didn't have the intestinal fortitude to say, "So what? I want to do it." So I ended up doing a bunch of different careers. Last one, I spent 20 years as an engineer. And then when I retired, I said, now I get to do what I want. Now I get to tell stories. And it's been a challenge, and it's been outside my comfort zone in a lot of ways, but it's a constant joy, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
So amazing.
Yeah.
What is your schedule like when you are writing a book?
What is my schedule like? Well, I write every day. Some days you don't get much, some days you get a lot, but every day you're either writing outlines, you're writing notes, or you're writing text. You're trying to make a little progress every day, because the reason that the best novels look so clever is that you're seeing 6, 9 months, a year of somebody's thinking compressed into the 15, 20, 25 hours you spend reading it. And it takes time to have all those ideas, and it takes time to sand and polish them and fit them all together. And it takes time to do the work. So, some people do marathon writing sessions. I try to get 1,000 words a day. Sometimes I get three, sometimes I get 500. But if you just stick with that discipline where you just do a moderate amount every day, then it starts to add up.
Love that. What do you need in your writing space to help you stay focused?
Solitude, quiet, just time to think. I use music a lot. I I have particular pieces of music that I'll use to invoke moods, to invoke characters, to just help me get into the proper mindset to imagine a scene so I can write it down. It's the more vividly you can picture something, the more vividly you can write it.
Love that. What is your favorite writing snack or drink?
Hmm. I typically don't eat much while I'm writing. Um, I find that distracting. I've always got my ice water. I drink constantly, but no, no, I don't eat until I'm done with most of my writing for the day. Maybe that motivates me. I'm hungry. I got to finish this.
Love that. What type of books do you personally enjoy reading?
um, I'm almost exclusively a fantasy and science fiction writer. And I tend to think those two are different aspects of the same thing. They're both okay. We're going to put the reader in a world that they don't quite know the rules of, that is unfamiliar to them, and they're going to get to learn about this world as they experience the story. And I really enjoy the experience of being taken to a new place where the rules are different, and getting to kind of figure it all out as I go. So classic science fiction, Heinlein, Niven, Clark, Benford, Zelazny, Le Guin. Some of the newer stuff, I quite enjoyed the Expanse series. Actually, pretty similar to what I'm doing with Theft of Fire. The Martian was very, very eye opening. Just, Andy Weir is a master of sort of reinventing hard science fiction as a modern thing. And that was a big inspiration to me.
Love that. That kind of rolls into our next question. Are there any books or authors that inspired you to become a writer?
Ah, several. Well, Brandon Sanderson. In fact, Theft of Fire is dedicated to Brandon Sanderson because he has been so unselfish in supporting newer writers. And one of the things that he did that really made a huge difference for me was he recorded a series of lectures that he gave on writing fantasy and science fiction at Brigham Young University some years back now, I think at least a decade ago. But he put them up on YouTube. And I went through those and they sort of transformed me from someone who wrote really good scenes to someone who could now, okay, I understand how to put all these ideas I have and all these little pieces of writing I do. I understand how to structure that and put it into a story that works. I understand how to stop starting and start finishing. So that was a big inspiration to me. I mean, I enjoy some of his books as well, but he's more my favorite author as a fellow author. And that was a very big help to me. As a reader, I've always been inspired by a favorite author of mine, Walter John Williams. And he hasn't quite gotten the fame he deserves. Not a huge amount of people have heard of him because he is so creative and so eclectic that he just gets these wild ideas and he loves to switch genres. You can be loving his science fiction series and then he'll get bored and write a western. You're like, well, this isn't really my genre. So that has sort of impeded him in creating a fandom in the same way that some other authors do, but every piece of his writing is sort of a master class in how to create settings and create believable characters. So, I was inspired a lot by him. But there's a lot of authors that inspired me. And something I did with Theft of Fire was I tried to hide little Easter eggs, little references to all of the works that I admired or took inspiration from. So if you read very carefully and you're familiar with all this stuff, you'll spot these little hidden references to books I liked. I had fun
Mhm.
with that.
Love that. That's super unique. What books did you grow up reading? Did you have an all-time favorite?
Did I have an all-time favorite? That's so tough. I mean, I've talked about a lot of the authors I like already. I also enjoyed Tolkien very much. I especially enjoyed The Hobbit. Lord of the Rings is good, don't get me wrong, but I really, really, really enjoyed The Hobbit because if you look at what he does with the language and the narrative, there's particular tones that he creates. And the Hobbit actually has a hidden character. It's really cool. The Hobbit actually has a narrator character that he creates entirely with his use of voice and speaking directly to the reader. And it's like he's created this atmosphere like you're sitting around a campfire and someone's telling you a story. And that's where books really come from. It's sort of storyteller is kind of the second oldest profession.
Love that. On the other side of that, now as an adult, what are your favorite series or authors that if they come out with something, you automatically grab it?
Sanderson, anything that Walter John Williams does in fantasy or science fiction. Um, I quite like Andy Weir. I enjoyed the Expanse series, but S.A. Corey is actually a team of two guys, and on their own they do different stuff, which is not always in the same genre. but let's see what else. I'm quite fond of Niven. He's still putting out some very good stuff. But I try to be a little bit eclectic. I try to do new stuff because I know that I'm very, very picky. You know, I don't finish most of the books that I start because I'm like, okay, if this doesn't a 100% grab me, I'm probably going to end up setting it down. So I know that if I want to have enough stuff to read, I have to try new authors all the time. So let's see who else. Um, Authors that most people haven't heard of. Douglas Hewlick, who wrote Among Thieves, and Barry Hewart wrote a very, very excellent fantasy series set in a sort of a magical, mythological version of ancient China, which was really fun. Eight Skilled Gentlemen, The Bridge of Birds, The Story of the Stone. Definitely check those out there. Very, very underrated.
Love that. What would you tell someone just starting out with reading again?
What would I tell someone just starting out with reading again? You mean advice?
If yeah, advice, it could be someone older, someone younger,
Uh,
kinda
well, there's a thing that I've noticed in the modern publishing industry, and that's that some of the people who inherited sort of the big five Manhattan press, they they became very interested in what they thought that people should read rather than what they thought that people like to read. And that has kind of affected, I don't know about the quality, but the enjoyability of some of the books out there. And so the one message I would have for readers is, you're not there to be preached at. You don't have to settle for being treated like an audience that somebody is going to recruit for a cause or a belief system, or that somebody is going to preach to or lecture. You're there to be entertained. You're there to experience something you enjoy. And you're not there for somebody else's purposes because you're writing the checks. So you deserve to be catered to. So if you're not enjoying a book, if you're being, you know, because it's poorly written, or because someone's preaching to you, or because it's just not your thing, set it down. You don't owe the author anything. You already bought the book. You are owed a good time when you buy a book. And if someone disappoints you, you don't have to put up with that. It's time we started focusing on readers again.
on the other side of that, what would you tell someone just starting to write their own book?
Swing for the fences. Swing for the fences, write what you love, and you will give your readership something to love. You know, no one ever produced a masterpiece. No one ever produced a beloved book by chasing what was hot right now. When Brandon Sanderson was first coming up, everybody told him, can you write it darker? We're not sure we can market this. Can you write it darker? Because what was going on right then was that George Martin's Game of Thrones was extremely popular. And they were looking for the next George Martin. Well, I'll tell you who the next George Martin is. His name is George Martin, and he's still alive. So don't try to be some other author who sold well. You know, try to I wouldn't even say try to find your voice, because you will find it's unavoidable. Your authorial voice consists of the things that you can't avoid doing. And so what you need to do is refine it and focus on making it the best version of yourself that you can. And then that is going to hopefully find its audience if you worked on your skills and have any talent. So trust yourself and tell the story you want to tell.
Love that. What's one thing that people are generally surprised to find out about you?
What's one thing that, oh God, where do I start? I'm a bit of a weirdo. I actually stand out a lot at science fiction conventions because I have two wives and they go to all my conventions with me. And I don't know how anybody can do this with just one spouse. I mean, it's taken the efforts of all three of us to manage this enterprise sort of solo without a publisher, and just to get from manuscript to here is the Amazon page and you can order it, and people are actually ordering it. It's amazing. So, I have Sarah's running the website and a lot of the logistical work. And, Christine is my publicist and my agent. And they've both been wonderful. They've been wonderfully supportive. And, it's like they believe in me, even on the days that I don't believe in myself. So, to be a new writer, you absolutely need that emotional support system, because you're bringing something new into the world that nobody asked for. And you need an insane amount of self-belief just to power through all the things that you have to do. So my non-traditional family structure has been a big help to me there.
Love that. Is there anything you would like to say or add?
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for doing this. It's such a pleasure. One of the joys of writing is that you sit alone and you develop your ideas. And then there's this stage where you actually are published and you get to go out into the world and talk to people about it, and you find out how many people are just like you inside, and they're in love with the same sorts of ideas. And they say amateur authors talk about writing and professional authors talk about money, and to a certain extent that's true. I mean, you do sort of talk about how to monetize, but really I've always been in love with these discussions about ideas. So whenever I sit around with other authors, I'm always trying to pull them back to, what if this, what if that, or what if you had a character like this, or these are let's talk about some of the ways of creating tension, because I'm just so in love with the process. And appearing on all these little podcasts and TV shows and stuff has been such fun, even when I'm not thinking about the audience, because I get to talk to people like you and hear all these different perspectives about reading and the way you see literature and books and what you love about them. So that has been just super fun, and I never anticipated that. I always thought it was like sitting alone in your room banging away on a keyboard, but that's only the half of it. It's also getting yourself out there and talking to people.
Love that. Where's the best place for readers to find your book? I know some readers love signed copies. Is that an option? And the best place to connect with you?
Well, I have a website, devoneriksen.com, Devoneriksen, and that has links to all my social media. It has the first three chapters of the book as a sample. It has some of my short fiction and, links to sign up for the mailing list if you want to be notified. And, here's the Amazon page where you can order it. And we're still getting a mechanism in place for ordering signed copies, but I tend to, there's a schedule page where I attend various science fiction and fantasy conventions, mostly in the southern United States, but kind of all over. And, if you walk up to me there and, sort of grab me by the coat, here, I bought your book. Will you sign it for me? Of course, I'd love to, So getting those out in the mail to people, we're still kind of figuring out the logistics on that. But stay tuned. We'll solve that problem.
Love that. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We're so grateful that we got to interview you. We'll be sure to drop those links in the show notes. That way everyone can find you. And again, thank you so much.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.